provide choice, control, and consent to create trust. Well, that's very concisely said because when we talk about trust, there are user expectations. And then there is the aspect of AI. That's when it starts to get blurred. And then we talk about, does privacy play a role in creating trust? Or what role do privacy laws play in creating trust? And if all that is put in perspective, organizations need to take initiatives to create trust. And finally, if you do all that right, you win trust. But what do you do in all that? You provide a choice, you provide a control, and you ask for consent. And when you do all that, you create digital trust. Well, that is very simply said and very complex or very ambitious to do. And it's a dynamic thing because you continue to do actions on an ongoing basis, continuous basis. And how about talking about all this in detail with a privacy colleague who's very well known in the circles? And I'm talking about none other than Katrina Destree. So let's go and talk to her.
Hello, and welcome to the Fit for Privacy Podcast with Punit Bhatia. This is the podcast for those who care about their privacy. Here, your host, Punit Bhatia, has conversations with industry leaders about their perspectives, ideas, and opinions relating to privacy, data protection, and related matters. Be aware that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not legal advice. Let us get started.
So here we are with Katrina Destree. Katrina, welcome to the Fit for Privacy podcast.
Thank you so much, Punit. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So let's start with a basic question. Now, we talked about privacy a few years ago. Then we talked about, or before that, we talked security, then risk and compliance, and so on and so forth. And then we were saying AI will come, will take away our jobs, and we don't have anything to do. We can go on holidays. And nowadays, we are talking about what we call digital trust.
Yeah.
So, in your view, how would you describe this concept of digital trust?
Digital trust is about confidence, and perhaps we are thinking about that as we're on holidays, and we are thinking about all the processes that it took for us to get on a holiday, taking our flight or getting in our car and going through toll roads, et cetera, in our hotel and our accommodations, and all of those transactions. And so we're thinking about the confidence in those organizations and how they've processed our personal data responsibly. So we're having hopefully confidence and trust that all those data elements shared have been properly processed, they're being used for the purposes that they've been requested, and they're managed along the way in a secure manner.
That is very well said. I would usually not be able to add anything to that. But I would say then maybe from a user perspective. So we as privacy pros or security pros sometimes can define things like that. But what would be a user expectation? So typical user, let's say any of our children, family, friends, colleagues who are not privacy pros, what would they have an expectation in terms of digital trust?
That's a great question because I think that their expectations are much higher than ours. They're much greater. They've grown up with iPads in their hands very early on. I'm guessing age 6, perhaps even younger. And they start, if not at home, then in their educational setting. And so they're familiar with the digital world. And they start to ask questions earlier as well. And I'm basically surrounded by Gen Z. So I have a lot of questions coming to me from my son and his friends. And actually I have 3 sons, so I have them coming from each angle. And they are asking me sets of questions. Mom, do I need to give this information? What happens when I get this form? Should I really fill this out? Where is it going? Is this necessary? And I actually am surprised and I'm impressed. I'm thinking, have they been really paying attention to me and my work, or through osmosis, they've kind of gathered this kind of intelligence or level of awareness? And I think it's probably all of the above. It's also conversations that they have within their own groups, and they're asking themselves, do I need to give this information? And they're becoming more and more aware. So those expectations are increasing. And I think that it's a dynamic exercise between those that are requesting the information and those that are providing the information. And
That
expectations are greater.
that does make sense because these people, they have some tech affinity. So iPads and iPhones and these things are natural to them, but they also have some digital savviness. They're not over concerned, like
Right.
Instagram converted into paid uh, option for in case you don't want them to use data, and they are open to let them use data. But when they are asked to share too much, then they also get sensitive, saying, why do you need to know that? Is that really necessary? And that's a language we use rather than the non-privacy pros use. But in all this context of trust or digital trust, and when we talk about the user expectations as well, where does the concept of or the technology called AI fit in?
AI is right there with us. And
Yes.
it can be both great and it can be cautionary, right?
Mhm.
So AI can fit into the area of really being an effective tool. It's what we make it. So AI, or we think of AI from the user perspective and an everyday perspective from the bots.
Mhm.
And we think of it as being a way for companies to be efficient and also
Mhm.
for us to be efficient. Now we're used to having customer service situations with chat, multitasking. We're multitasking, they're multitasking. And the bot options create efficiencies. And I think that customers like that efficiency. And I've also read the recent ISACA report, and this also lends credibility to that statement, is that we as customers want to know that there's a high level of efficiency without the potential for human error. At the
Yeah.
same time, we want the human oversight because we don't want to lose complete control of that processing. So it's very important to have that combination of AI plus the human oversight. When it comes to the bots and where AI fits into the picture, I think staying in the driver's seat is very important for organizations. Looking at that bot as what it is, it's a tool. So it's not going to assume the risk. It's going to help with the efficient side of processing, providing the options. I think that there's another area that can be very useful for us to consider, and that is a tool to convey an organization's privacy practices, privacy familiarity, commitment to privacy. So, for example, if you're in a chat session and the bot states, okay, choose your option. Is it your travel? Is it your account? Is it a question? Is it this? Is that? There can also be an option to say, would you like to know more about our privacy policy? Would you like to know about how useful your data is going to be for the next series of questions? Here's how you can benefit from sharing these particular data elements. And I think as a consumer, we like to have a lot of these personalized uh, options for us. I know, for example, I'm going to be appreciating the fact that my car might guess where I'm going tonight. And I'll get in, I'll have 5 minutes to spare, and I will be happy that, okay, great. They kind of guess the location where I might be going based on my patterns, and it saves me time. So I like that personalization. When I log on to my music and there's a recommendation for what songs, I might appreciate, a new artist that I haven't explored before, I like that personalization. But I want it to be a tool that's for the purpose of being efficient. I don't want to feel that I've lost control. I don't want to feel in the dark about where is this information going. I don't want to feel manipulated to give more information than is necessary.
I'm fully with you. I think it's a tool. That's the right word you used. It helps us get things done better. It helps us get things which we don't know of or understand what we don't know of. But as
Mhm.
long as it asks us, it gives us the choice, gives us the control. Because a few months back, I was listening to a podcast of a monk, and he said, somebody asked him, can you use emails? Are you tech savvy? And he said, yes. And then he cracked a joke saying, we use email without being attached to it. And that's the thing. So the same thing here. As long as we are able to use AI and we feel we are using it, that's fine. But when it
Right.
starts to use us and we
Exactly.
become the product, that's not okay. Because we want to be confident, we want to be having the control and the feeling that we are running it, and sometimes if the suggestions are annoying, then we should also be able to turn it off. And that's where the human oversight and control comes in. Now, that's a fascinating conversation already, and I would like to take a turn towards the privacy aspect of it. So, if there is digital trust and there is AI, both elements, AI making suggestions, AI making life easier, AI making it efficient, but does privacy have a role in here to play, in especially in creation of digital trust? Then,
Absolutely. So privacy has a role to play in the area of controlling your personal data, how it's being used, how it's being transmitted, how it's being handled, the entire life cycle. So it's staying in control. I think that's the key word. When I think of privacy, I think a lot of C's, words that begin with C. We have consent, right? We have
mm-hmm,
choice, we have
mm-hmm,
control, probably many other words that will pop up, but they seem to a lot of them seem to begin with the letter C. But
mm-hmm,
choice, control, consent, very important in privacy. And so when we think of the privacy laws and regulations that have appeared over the past few years, this is giving us assurance, and it's giving us the feeling that there will be consequences, another word with a C, consequences, if these principles are not really followed. And so we want that level of confidence, and we want to have that assurance that this is the direction that's being taken, that these are the messages that are being conveyed to organizations that we understand need this data. And I should qualify personal data. So privacy is about personal data. And I also think that when we think of personal data, we need to remember that word personal, making it personal to us so that we can stay in control of our personal data.
that makes perfect sense. Choice, consent, and control on personal data create
Right.
trust. And that's very powerful message. And now, to protect privacy, we have two things. One, you talked about the principles, which are self-implied or sometimes imposed by law. But then there are also privacy laws. And
Yes.
do you believe these privacy laws are also helping create trust, especially say GDPR or the CCPA or the Deletion Act in the California?
Absolutely. Because let's step back outside of our own circle of privacy and security professionals. They are helping create trust because they're educating. A lot of these agendas for the regulators, when they have, like, for example, in California, the California Privacy Protection Association, which is relatively new. We also have the European Board of Data Protection. When they have meetings that are public meetings, they'll publish the agenda. And that's for anyone to review, and they can register to join. There's actually a meeting this Friday in California that can be joined virtually. And if people feel perhaps self-conscious that I'm not a privacy pro, I'm just, an average person, but I'm curious, right? You can join in anonymously. You don't have to reveal your personal information to join these meetings. And it's a chance to become educated. So that's the first level of awareness, that there are these laws that are to assure that personal information is being processed in a responsible manner, and educating people. So that is the first step, is this level of awareness. And then going forward, how to sustain it. So it's not like you're compliant one day. Good, we're done. we're good to go, right? It's dynamic. It's
Yeah.
ongoing. So these laws, as we've seen, and there are rules that come along with the laws afterwards. There's regulations. Here's how you do this. Here's how we activate these laws, and we go forward. And there's opportunities for public comment as well. And oftentimes the entities that submit the comments are associations. So they're representing entire sectors. So again, we're stepping outside of our own circle of privacy and security professionals. We're getting into the general public arena, and we're raising levels of awareness, and we're raising this conversation. And perhaps that's why Gen Z is tuned in and becoming aware. I also think, coming back to that topic, Gen Z, they might have had more negative experiences with their personal information being compromised. And I'm not speaking necessarily about a breach. I'm speaking about the misuse they've posted on social media, and perhaps it had a negative reaction, and they questioned, why did I share that information? And they step back and say, oh, that was personal to me. Maybe I should be a little bit more cautious about what exactly I share. Or they're facing news reports. Here's what happened, and it was because there was access to this personal information. So I think there's a really much higher level of awareness than we've ever had before.
I agree with you. So if we look back to our conversation, there is the concept of digital trust. The users expect it, privacy contributes, AI is there, and when you use it with right consent, choice, and control, it creates trust. And then we talked about that laws are also there to help create trust, like you mentioned in California, when
Yes.
the authorities are meeting, the meetings are public and people can join in. So all that is creating trust. And now all this concept or the law or the authorities are there to guide organizations to be able to sell their products or sell their products while creating comfort for the consumer that the products are trustworthy and there's nothing being done to their personal data and they are remaining in control of their personal data. So, in this situation, if you look at it from an organization perspective, how would an organization demonstrate the leadership or demonstrate the actions to create or inspire, let's say, the digital trust environment from a consumer standpoint?
Yes, that's a great question, because organizations are the one processing the personal data. So
Yeah.
the organizations, to demonstrate leadership, need to be proactive. And I've seen some very good examples of this, especially as I've seen the way that privacy policies, and I use the word policy because that's what the public knows, the privacy policy. The correct word, of course, is privacy notice, because
Yeah.
that's the external facing document. The policies are the internal facing documents, but the notice. So for sake of simplicity, I'll just say the privacy policy, right?
Okay.
The external privacy policy. I've seen these policies get better and better. I've seen these policies take on a more conversational tone. Not only we treat your privacy seriously, okay, that's the old term. Now it's like FAQs. Here's what we process. Do you have any questions? And they will list questions. They will list scenarios. They will list icons to find out more information. I do believe that some companies that are demonstrating leadership will be straightforward. Yes, we are processing your personal data. Yes, we are processing for these particular purposes. Here are some scenarios where we're processing personal data. Some companies even publish their policies on dealing with third parties. If you are a third party / vendor, we are expecting you to adhere to the same standards that we determine are necessary for proper processing. And I've been impressed with certain companies that have made such statements public. So that inspires trust. That's an example of leadership and thinking in advance and really getting out there and being proactive, having training, digital trust training, privacy training, not just a small segment once a year that people will probably forget about, but really making it part of our DNA, part of not just, well, we need to say this for our customers, but perhaps people are employees and they have their personal data being processed. So they want confidence. So every stakeholder that the organization is working with. So that can start internally with employees, that can go with obviously their investors, that can go with NGOs, non-governmental organizations and watchdogs, that can go with regulators, that can be part media relations, that can be a wide range of stakeholder engagement, being proactive, anticipating what those stakeholders are expecting regarding the processing of personal information, and already being prepared to make a statement on that that's demonstrating that level of accountability for how they are processing personal data. So being very proactive. And again, I'll use that similar visual, staying in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I
And
think
having that keyword accountability is super important. And that's how they'll demonstrate leadership.
absolutely. And I think sometimes, like you made the distinction between the notice and the policy.
Yeah.
I think you do publish a notice, but it's okay for a company to be upfront, to take the leadership and publish the policy saying this is how we are protecting your data internally. Now, I was
Yes.
working with a company and I was blessed to be in such a transparent company who published the notice and along with it said this is our data protection policy across the globe. If you want to read it, read it. And then I thought everyone is like that. And I was consulting for another company and I asked, let's publish that. And they have transparency in their values. But when I say publish the policy, they are scared. They are worried that others will know what we do. No, others will be happy to know that this is what you do.
Right.
And it's a competitive advantage, but they were concerned. So it was a bit awkward to say you have transparency in your values, but you're not open to share your policy. So you're right. You need to be proactive. You need to take it on and make things happen and share things proactively. But let's imagine you do these proactive things. You make a notice, you share your policy, you give control, you give consent. Is that going to be good enough to win customer trust in this, what do you say, the world of AI, digital tech, and so
The word good enough, it sounds like it's stopping, right?
on?
It
Yes.
sounds like a checkbox. It sounds like, hey, we're good, right?
Yeah.
Turn the page, next agenda item.
Yeah.
We have to think of it differently. We have to think of, instead of saying done or good enough, we have to think of dynamic.
Yes.
What's the next step? Again, being proactive, anticipating. The world is changing around us, right? I mean, everything is changing. So we need to stay on top of that and anticipate the change. If we have a list of FAQs, anticipate that they'll increase.
Hmm.
As we use AI, anticipate that more is around the corner. As we use options to help customers control their personal data, anticipate there's going to be more requests, more options, more, et cetera. So I think the key word is dynamic,
Hmm.
not good enough.
And I think dynamic and continuous, because on
Continuous,
a
yes.
dynamic basis you stay alert, you don't, you keep watching the market, you keep watching consumer behaviors, you keep checking your risk posture, and then on a continual basis trying to adapt, trying to change where you need to improve and where you need to fine tune your policy, maybe where your actions, maybe your risk status, maybe, or the assessments you've done. And as you do that, then you would create digital trust. And as you create that digital trust, consumers would come to you. But then you still need to remain dynamic and still need to continue to do those things. But that leads us towards the end of conversation, because it's been a fascinating conversation and we have covered much ground in very short time. But I would like to ask that you describe what do you do on a day-to-day basis, because it's been a very profound conversation and people would like to understand what do you do and how can they reach out to you if they want to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for that question. It has been a great conversation, Puneet. I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate your thought leadership as well, as we were speaking a little bit about that before we started the recording. So yes, I advise public and private organizations on how to improve their privacy awareness and to sustain their activities. And also a key part of that is in the area of training. So as you know, I do privacy training. I'm on the IAPP faculty for the CIPM program, and I've really enjoyed that both in person and online, and that reinforces my own understanding of all the things that are changing in the area of privacy. It's every day. As I like to joke, I go to sleep at night and I think that I'm aware and current, and then I wake up and say, which new privacy law got passed? And I need to be completely aware of what happened at night when I was sleeping in other parts of the world in the area of privacy, because it's very dynamic and very exciting. And including in my off time with those that will listen, I talk about privacy and security and artificial intelligence. I think that these areas are quite fascinating. So in
Absolutely.
terms of reaching out to me, it can be definitely on LinkedIn. So my name, Katrina Destree, on LinkedIn. I am on there every day, and that's the best way to send me a message. And of course, also at my website, which is agreaprivacyesg.com.
That's wonderful. And I would say it was wonderful to have you, Katrina.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you very much, Puneet. I really appreciate the work and your leadership.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you liked the show, feel free to share it with a friend and write a review. If you have already done so, thank you so much. And if you did not like the show, don't bother and forget about it. Take care and stay safe. Fit for Privacy helps you to create a culture of privacy and manage risks by creating, defining, and implementing a privacy strategy that includes delivering scenario-based training for your staff. We also help those who are looking to get certified in CIPPE, CIPM, and CIPT through on-demand courses that help you prepare and practice for certification exam. Want to know more? Visit www.fit4privacy.com. That's www.fit4privacy.com. If you have questions or suggestions, drop an email at hello@fit4privacy.com. Until next time, goodbye.
Now, for those of you who have been in privacy or who are in privacy field, you know that January 28th is coming up, and January 28th is a privacy day or International Privacy Day. So, for those of you who are in privacy, take this opportunity to pass on a message to your staff, to your colleagues, and emphasize the message on how privacy can help create digital trust. And if you need any help, do not hesitate to reach out, because we are doing this with many other clients and many other companies to support them in creating this awareness and campaigns. So, enjoy Privacy Day.